Welcome back to Story Deep Dive with Dana and Rachel. This is a podcast with book coaches, editors, and besties. We discuss books not as readers, but as writers to draw inspiration from great books and lots of laughs. And you are joining us as we go into our final episode of our discussion around Sharp Objects by Gillian Flynn. Y'all, I'm hanging on by a thread. I'm about to butcher the name, butcher the book, but I'm telling you, I know what I'm talking about. Okay. So, this is our fourth episode, and we're going to talk about our editor's takeaways. This discussion has been so great over the past three episodes, and I feel like this one is going to bring it all together. But before we get into talking about the editor's takeaways, we're going to talk about our next book club selection. I was about to turn it over to Rachel. Y'all, listen.
For it. I was like, I could see it in your eyes that you wanted to say, Rachel, what do you have going on over at Story Cipher? But I was watching you actively resist it and think about what am I supposed to say instead. I watched it happen.
Listen, okay, y'all, this is going to start off with a story time. What had happened was, okay, listen. So our next book selection is Broken Harbor by Catherine Cowles. And here is the catch. We don't know what's going to happen. We, as in, I don't know. I picked the book, but I haven't finished reading the book. Let me tell you what happened. Okay.
Explain yourself to the people, Dana.
What happened was, this is the first time this has ever happened, okay? However, I started reading this book and I was like, oh my goodness, this book is so good. I hope that the end is as good as the beginning. This is the only thing that I'm hoping, because y'all know Rachel has particular standards. So,
That's such a nice way of putting it.
It's the truth. So, why did I pick this book? First of all, I'm yearning for some romance books. However, this book is a little bit different. And even as I think about it right now, there's some aspects of it that sort of double click on what we've been talking about for the past few episodes. Things like, how you set up and start your stories, that this story, the way it begins is sort of the baseline for where you're taking it. And this is technically considered, I think technically it's kind of considered a romantic suspense, like a hockey romance. Hockey romances were really huge, and I don't know why hockey was, but it was. The opening of this book kind of floored me. Like, I was reading, because I back up one more step. So whenever we go out for my birthday, we usually spend the day out. We go do stuff. We go to shops. We go to quilt shops. We go to hobby shops because I have hobbies. And so my husband takes me out to do hobbies. We go eat. And of course, it means we have to go to the bookstore. We go to Barnes and Noble. My husband finds a chair, and I know exactly where he is until I finish going around and perusing. So I went to the sections. I wanted to go through the aisles, and I was looking for something or an author or books that probably wouldn't naturally cross my path. So of course I'm looking at covers. I wanted to try to get something by an author of color. I wanted to maybe get something that was really like truly romantic suspense. And I found a couple of other books. I even wanted to look like for a sweet romance. Like, I had some like categories I was sort of shooting for. And then, so I pick up this book, and when you see the cover looks like, somewhere like country, like, I don't know, like Alaska. I don't know. It just looks like trees and stuff. I was not expecting that when you read the prologue that there would be like, it would be a very intense scene. So I didn't read it. I just read the description. I thought it looked good. I got the book. So a few weeks later, I'm at a meeting. I'm at a doctor's appointment. I'm waiting in the waiting room for somebody because I was just there to support. And I'm reading a book, and I'm reading it all.
Sitting in the waiting room, like,
yes, everybody's like, listen, I'm in Houston, so when you are in the like in the medical center in the cancer district, baby, it's all kind of people. So it's all economic status. It's probably I look crazy, y'all, because I'm just like, and of course doing what highlight, tabby. I was like, so
like, I'll have what she's having.
listen, I look crazy, but I couldn't stop. You know how when you're reading and you realize your mouth is hanging open, and I keep telling Dana, close your mouth, Dana, close your mouth. So this is why I picked the book. So when I decided I knew I was going to pick it, I stopped reading it until I was like, okay, are we going to pick this book for real? We picked the book. I haven't started it again, but it will be done, of course, by the time we have the discussion. I think it's going to be a really great addition. Number one, because I'm ready for romance again, but I think it's going to be another one of those where we'll be able to add romantic suspense in our catalog. The last time we did it was, I think, Tony Anderson.
Yes.
I think
with Indigo.
No. The one with
Oh no, Tony Anderson, Cold and Deadly.
Rachel is half awake and half asleep. And so we'll see. I don't know. But that is going to be our selection. And I'm looking forward to it, especially because at first I think it's only my third hockey romance. And so far I'm liking it. Single mom that has to relocate to start her life over with her son. And he is a star hockey player that's on some sort of, what do you want to call it? Like behavioral probation or something like that.
Oh.
Because he gets into trouble. But I think they're supposed to do that in hockey. See, exactly. That's what I thought, girl. I don't know about hockey. So
this is going to be my first sports romance.
Really?
Yeah, I've never read a sports romance before. Not that I can think of. We've had rom-com, small town.
Well, you have a mind. Technically. That's years ago. This is probably why you don't remember. Play to Win is could be fall under sports romance.
Oh, does it?
It can. That one and Game Over. They could, but I don't classify them that way because it doesn't take up a big part, but it's a part of the main male characters' lives. But yeah, but that was years ago. You haven't read that in
that was a long.
How many?
We've been friends since 2019, which was 7 years ago.
I was about to say a long time ago. I didn't know how long. You would know the time.
Happy 7-year anniversary.
Okay. Are you counting the time that we first met or when I remembered that I met you the first time?
Gentle listener, are you aware that Dana, after we had met, didn't know that we had met? I was like, I remember we talked, and you were like,
I was just like, oh, okay.
She didn't remember me. And
no,
I'm not.
No, tell the truth. No, I remembered meeting you. I just didn't know you was you. I remembered your story. I remember about your husband. I remember about college. True. I remember about writing. I remember all the details.
It's true. The name and the name and the story hadn't made a connection. And also, you thought that I was like 20.
But you were.
When we met, I was 26 or 27.
You always tell me that. I always think you was like, right. Especially when you told me you were married. I was like, oh, she just the baby.
Yeah, because I was a newlywed when we met. I had only been married, hadn't even been married a year yet. We'd been married about 6 months by the time we met at that conference.
See? I know, but like, oh, yeah, you just the baby. And you was like, then you told me you were like 26. I was like, oh, but you still look like the same as you did then. So yes, so we sat by each other and talked. And we, you know me in those situations, all those people, I don't remember anything. I mean, I remember all the a lot of important stuff. It was.
And then we connected again a few months later because we were going through the same editor certification. I think it was later that year.
Like a couple of months after.
I was going to say, yeah, at the latest, it would have been early 2020, but I think it was before the pandemic hit. Like it was. Yeah, because we were already talking.
Because remember, when we were at the training, people had already started receiving acceptances.
That's right. That's right. Yes, because you were one of them. You're like, oh yeah, I already got my acceptance. And I was like, we can apply now? Wait, what? And then I will tell you, I came home from that conference and I was like, I better get my application and get my spot because I didn't realize they were already like doing acceptances. So I was like, I better get in there before I miss my chance. And within probably a week, I had applied.
Come on.
And then do you know how hard I worked on that application?
Girl, I can only imagine.
Edited that thing within an inch of its life. It was impassioned. It was full. I answered every question. I mean, multiple paragraphs. Like, I was like on it. Something's never changed.
You just...
My face and my extraness.
Listen, and then we, how do we, I know we connected on Instagram, but I feel like it was something else that brought us together before that. Maybe you did something and tagged that you were studying or something.
Yes, I made an Instagram post that had I had laid out like a visual study plan because of course I did. And I had like these like fillable things, right, that I could like color in as I completed tasks. And you're like, oh, that's awesome. Like I'm studying too. And so then we chatted on Instagram, exchanged emails, and then started meeting regularly on Zoom.
Yep. So since then. Wait, so then that's when we went to that training was 2017. You said 2019.
The conference we met at was 2019. Our training was in 2020. I was there in person. So we'd been talking and everything. But you weren't there in person because you had to fly. Oh, yeah, I just drove down to Nashville because it was still, it was October 2020.
And I thought people still had heebie-jeebies. They still had drums.
Yeah. And honestly, I was in my own car, in my own space, very different from having to like go to an airport, fly in an airplane. I wouldn't have done it either. But then there was a conference like the following year where we finally got to actually meet in person. And we stayed in the same Airbnb and we had all kinds of shenanigans.
And it has been literally a wrap.
We had a random man wander into our Airbnb. That was the second time.
Was that the second or third time?
I believe it was the second time that we stayed at that place. And
y'all, I had to protect Rachel's honor. She just gonna be, listen, I was about to tear that old man up. What a raggedy hanger.
Slightly drunken man walking through the owner's like private door. I think after that happened, we stuck a chair in front of that door.
We should every time.
If this ever happens, at least we're gonna like slow him down.
Rachel,
I would tell you the thing that I was like the most mad about is like this drunken man stumbles into our space and through like, one of those doors that's like that the owner kept locked so that because it was supposed to be private. And he wanders into the bathroom that there was a 2-bathroom place. So I had one and Dana had one that was supposed to be my bathroom and made a mess going to the bathroom in my bathroom. I was so mad. I sprayed every inch of that freaking bathroom down with Lysol. I was so peeved. So so Dana had her hanger and she was like, you need to leave, sir. Like she told him. And then, do you remember the guy we heard from the other side of the room? God damn it, DJ, get over here.
Yeah, it was like, we're left at you could tell it was an honest mistake. Basically, yes. Like the Airbnb was joined to their main residence, and I guess if they don't have people in there, people will use that second bathroom, on that first floor. We wasn't on the floor, but still. Yeah, listen, I was about to tear that old man up, drunk and all.
Dude, you were so ready to kick it. Sorry,
Rachel was like this. I'd be like, He'd be like,
oh man. I froze
I'm
so hard. Dana was just yelling at this man. She was like, "You need to leave. You do not like we are guests here." Like Dana was like telling him how it was, and I was literally just sitting there like an idiot. Like I was so stunned that it had even had like my brain could not process
and
the
I'm all like,
information
listen,
that was
if you're gonna be
coming at me.
frozen, stand behind me, okay?
Please
Listen,
get out of the way.
girl. The poor man, I think he was more shocked than we were. He was so stunned. That's how
He
you
was
could
like,
just
"Oh,
see it
no."
was just like an honest mistake, but I still had to tell. I was like,
Yep.
you need to get up
Oh
out of
man.
here.
Yeah,
We're gonna have some
poor
problems.
and the poor owner was like, "Oh my god!" Like he sent me the most apologetic message. He was like, "I am so sorry." Like this, he was so mad at the guy. Oh my god! It's in the moment it was shocking and confusing, but then once the whole story had played out, it became impossibly funny. So
I'm like, Rachel,
anyway.
you gonna do is listen, you just gonna stay here and be cute. Stand over there, ma'am. Listen, I'm about to swing this hanger like a sword. Girl, I don't know what I'm about to do with a hanger. I'm gonna figure it out.
It's what we have on hand. I will say, okay, again, listener, this was many years ago. I was a different woman. I was younger
Come
then.
on.
I was not as worldly of a woman. I've been lifting weights, okay?
Come on.
So I think that I would be more equipped to handle the situation. I hope it never happens again because it was deeply unsettling in the moment. However, I feel like I'm older, I'm wiser, I take a little bit less BS, not a lot less, we're still working on it, but a little less, and I've been lifting weights, so next time I will, whatever those like WWE wrestlers do, where like pick them up, they like spin
Girl, lies you tell. Lies you Girl, listen, I'll pay somebody to come in just to see. I just want to see Rachel do that trick. Miss, I've been lifting weights. Girl, lift them. Shoot.
Never mind that the weights I'm working with are 15 pounds, and I'm like,
girl, I wasn't going to ask you how many, girl, because I know you in them arms and them thighs. I know. I was just going to listen. I was just going to let you have your moment because you was making a point. The details weren't necessary.
Thank you so much.
That's when you know somebody your real friend. Like, my girl gonna get him. That's right. Dude.
I believe in you. Yes,
Come
ma'am.
on.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be right there. We ain't gonna let him get far. Listen, we was gonna scare that old man. He was gonna have a heart attack or get out. Okay. Oh my gosh, girl, listen. And I ain't stayed in another Airbnb since. That's me. You don't want to.
I've changed my tune on the on the kind of places I stay.
But that place was nice though. They were
It
nice.
actually
I mean,
was,
that moment
yeah.
was, but it was a nice place, and there was good people, so that always helps.
And we were like, it was right next to the like conference center, and so that was really nice. Because honestly, the hotel across the street from that conference center was like not that nice. They charged a lot of money because it was downtown, but like it was kind of like run down, old. So like the Airbnb stayed in good shape. We had our own space. We would sit and we would like cook. We cooked those like chicken pot pies in the little like toaster oven that we had.
First of all, Rachel don't be cooking nothing. Then she was what happened? We did something, almost burnt something. I was like, oh Lord.
Oh yeah, we did. I don't remember what we did.
I think it had something at the bottom or something, remember?
Yeah.
I can't remember. After that, yeah, we had to just order food because that just wasn't. I don't know what happened. It wasn't a real little stove. It caused some problems. Our little
it was like a weird toaster oven. Yeah, it was not really designed for any kind of. It wasn't even really designed for putting stuff in the toaster oven. But it was good. If we're honest.
It was good. Listen, you got a little cook on. You know you don't cook like that. I love,
but man, the freaking pre-made pot pies. Are you kidding me? It cost us like $2. It was amazing. Get your Instacart order, and it all shows up at our door, and we would just stock up our fridge.
As soon as we get there, Instacart. They about to put some food on the porch. I ain't waiting on that. You know, I get my Doritos, my waxy cakes. Listen, Y'all can do whatever y'all want to, long as I got my stuff. Oh my gosh. Okay, y'all, let's get to it. Because we will sit here reminiscing, especially after we had a whole long day of recording. But
Oh man.
you are here for both the giggles and grins, because you know how that goes down, and for us to close out this book, which is a Rachel pick, which I keep reminding y'all of.
Minor shade in that statement, but yes.
But as you say, I enjoyed it for what it was worth.
You know,
So
you did come, like, kind of come around by the end of, like, you came in, you were like, I hate this. And then we talked about it, and you're like, it was really well done. I still didn't like it, but it was really well done.
Y'all know I'm a HEA kind of girl. Okay. Listen, this is what I just kept staring at the book like, why do people read this? I just couldn't understand. Okay.
Shaking the book. Why would you do this to me?
Why? You got all my money. Give my money back. But it's all good. It's all good. Okay, so before we get into talking about the editor's takeaways, Rachel's going to give us our caveat, and then she's going to give us the summary before we dive into today's discussion.
Yes,
Take it away, Rachel.
So quick caveat, which we've done every episode, but if this is your first time coming in, I just want to let you know that this novel goes into some really heavy themes that could be triggering if you have content sensitivities. And so if that's a concern that you have, make sure you check out something like the Trigger Warning Database before you read this book, because it does deal with some heavy and difficult themes. So take care of yourself, make sure that you're staying safe. So I want to give you like a heads up if you were thinking about reading this book. The summary will sort of, you kind of get that vibe off the summary as well. So speaking of which, let me go ahead and dive us in with the summary. So, fresh from a brief stay at a psych hospital, reporter Camille Preaker faces a troubling assignment. She must return to her tiny hometown to cover the murders of 2 preteen girls. For years, Camille has hardly spoken to her neurotic, hypochondriac mother or to the half-sister she barely knows, a beautiful 13-year-old with an eerie grip on the town. Now, installed in her old bedroom in her family's Victorian mansion, Camille finds herself identifying with the young victims, a bit too strongly. Dogged by her own demons, she must unravel the psychological puzzle of her own past if she wants to get the story and survive this homecoming.
So, since this was Rachel's pick, she's going to kick off talking about what are some of the things you would like for us to kind of talk about or kind of use to wrap up this discussion of sharp objects.
Yes, ma'am. So I have 2 sort of main, I mean, this whole conversation, for at least from my side and what my focus was when reading this was really about tone and theme. And I feel like you've heard me say the words tone and theme like 100,000 million times. And so but it's really, those are like 2 of the strongest like facets of this story because of the way she handles them in the plot and in the characters. So I want to just talk a little bit about how you use your plot to explore your theme while still maintaining the genre contract that you make with your readers, as well as using theme and even tone as well to shape your cast, because those your cast is really contributing to the expression of your theme, and then the way that tone kind of sits almost over all of it, shaping so many of those decisions, right? And how much you sort of calibrate that story to how far you go and how much you show. And that's really, really in play here. So those are my kind of like, I would say probably 2 overarching discussions that I'd like to kind of wrap us up with. What do you have on your list there, Dana?
Okay, I do have a list, child. I do have a list. Okay. But I think the first part kind of piggybacks, which we'll talk about when you are talking about the theme. I think it was a part of that for me, for the theme and tone, was the fact that there was that there was cohesive between the theme and the atmosphere. Like all of those choices that she made really paid off. And so things like the environment, the relationships, the timing, even to the point of I kind of put like hen pecking, like the dynamics between the people in town, her mother,
Mm-hmm.
her, and all of that sort of was folded into that theme. I also have the fact that in the beginning I felt like the tone substituted for some of those details because she nailed it. What that turned into is like we were essentially given grace for her to let her cook, right? Let those
Mm-hmm.
details come to her. Let our the details about Camille come to us. And what happened is she really began to sort of go from this, this consistent hum to a simmer to it was boiling, right? And part of that was because of her nailing that in the beginning, that we sort of was giving her what I call later a creative runway. And I'll talk about
Mm-hmm.
that in just a second. The third thing that I want to talk about is that part of these decisions also helped so that because she handled uncomfortable material really well with
Mm-hmm.
precision. She was really intentional, and that was kind of the part that I didn't like, but I could appreciate.
Yeah.
Mainly because I mean, anytime you're doing stuff with kids, little girls, it's just like okay.
Mm-hmm.
But listen, y'all, that was her base, and she took off from there, and so we see that in this story. And the part that I said earlier about that creative runway, which I could marry with the other, is that part of this in the beginning, because her setup was the way that she did, it sort of made it so that there was this snowball effect as we moved through the rest of that story. Where when you got to listen, I'm gonna speak for myself. I'm not gonna say you, but there is this part where I was like, "What's that song? Should I stay or should I go?" I was I was just like, what is this? I couldn't, my notes literally was like WTF. Like I did not know what was going on. I mean, I knew what was going on, but I just was like, oh my goodness. However, she managed to have you in this point of tension, of curiosity, and almost like longing. I can't think of another word right now because my brain is tired, but it was like you are so curious about what happens to Camille,
Yeah.
that you are just longing for any detail that she can give you to make it make sense.
Mm-hmm.
And because she was a an expert at the way she sort of dripped that out, you just had to wait. And so I think I'm saying four different things, but they build on each other. And I think there is
Yeah.
something really strong about them individually. So the fact that you are having it all in one story, it's almost like this powerhouse of a moment. And
Mm-hmm.
so, yes. So, with that said, let's go ahead and sort of rewind it just a little bit, and let's talk about the cast through theme. Is that
Yeah.
what you said? The way you worded it?
Yeah, or yes, actually, yeah, developing your cast through theme. So,
Yeah.
one of the things that we talked about last week in characters is the fact that all of the, particularly all of the people in Wind Gap, you can really see how they each sort of have some kind of relationship to violence and control, which are two of those kind of key operating themes at work. Um, and so the way that I think about this, and even what sometimes I'll encourage my students to do, is like you put that theme and you put it like in a circle and you write what that theme is, and then you give all of your other characters their own circle, and then you kind of draw a line and say, okay, how does this theme shape this character, or how this theme has shaped, right, the person that they've become. And you can look at it and see the kind of spread of experiences and responses to that theme. The This is really by spreading it across multiple characters, and by explore it gives you the opportunity to explore that theme in depth. That's what actually gives it like nuance and dimension, right? Because the
Hmm.
way that people experience a thing is different, right? Like everybody can even experience the same thing, right? Like, kids who grow up in the same household can experience that same household and adapt or come away from it differently, right? And so if you if you make an experience too ubiquitous, right, so that everybody deals with it and they end up looking the same, right, you're not capturing the opportunity to actually explore that theme. And when I think of themes, I do think of it as exploratory, right? It's your opportunity to delve into a phenomenon or a conflict or a type of situation and actually like kind of look at the nuance of it by exploring it through multiple different characters. And we really see that because what happens is, the way that our the different members of the cast deal with violence and control, right? Some people check out, some people perpetuate that violence, onto others. They've experienced violence and they perpetuate it onto others. That henpecking, right? The way that women treat each other. Some people turn into themselves, and that's how they deal with the violence, where they sort of perpetrate violence against themselves. And so it gives you the opportunity to really be deeply intentional about the way that you actually develop your cast, right? So that everyone in your cast is adding something to what it is you're exploring. So no one feels tangential or like, and then also there's this guy who's over here. He's also here, right? But actually letting each member of the cast like kind of pull their weight in exploring and communicating what it is that you're looking to do in the story.
Mm. This goes right into sort of my thing. I think they bump together nicely, which is because of having that. This is what you use as your lens for making choices. One of the things that you were talking about that when you think about the cast, there were a lot of characters in this story, but it didn't feel like a lot like when we dealt with Knock 'em Out, or a lot
Yeah.
like when we read Fourth Wing, right? It's almost as if they were homogenous until they weren't,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because it sort of was tinted and tainted by Camille's experience. And this,
Yeah.
again, came from the way that they were written. And so whether it was that location, the weather, the architecture, the relationships between each other, y'all, I low-key realized today how much I liked Jackie. Baby, I think she was like the drunk tipsy and intoxicated on medical substances. I don't know, pharmaceuticals. But was speaking truth almost to the point where people weren't listening because they knew. And so these are the sort of things that sort of brings color to this world that felt almost gray in your mind, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so having that in place and then having all of those come together, it's almost like you get like that 1-2 punch. It's sort of working together, and it's sort of pushing everything else. And the fact that she folds in that mystery, and the fact that she is folding in this journey that Camille is on, whether she wants to be on it or not, because essentially
Yeah.
she doesn't. She's just trying to get a job done. And so we see that. And I find that um this is probably one of the strongest books that we've read when it comes to theme
Yeah.
this year. I would say this year,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm not going to say across all, but I think it's one of the strongest. So definitely. So you first you talked about with the cast, and so you also wanted to sort of tie that into the plot, and I sort of hinted at it, but let's talk a little bit about that as well.
Yeah, there's something that you said during the plot episode, which I think is kind of really useful here. And it's the fact, now I'm going to butcher it because that was many hours ago, but
Yeah.
you basically said, like, nobody's showing up to your story for your soapbox, right? Like, we don't come to fiction to be like, you know what I would like to do is have someone didactically tell me what I ought to think about a thing. We go to nonfiction for that, right? We literally are like, we go to nonfiction because we're like, tell me what you think about this thing. I would like your information, please. In fiction, we come for stories. We come to experience narrative. And so when you have a strong theme that you want to explore, one of the best ways that you can do that is using your plot. And again, we've already talked about how characters contribute to that. But using your plot as like I don't want to say as a vehicle because that still makes it sound like the plot is secondary and you're just using it to carry the theme. But like, plot is your opportunity to communicate the theme so that the audience doesn't isn't told what you think, but experiences that theme for themselves, right? Because what you want them to have is their own experience with whatever it is that you're looking to communicate and explore. And so, for a story like this, where we're looking at the forms that violence takes, a crime story is an amazing way to do this, right? Because violence is baked into the genre. But because you are operating inside of a genre, you do make basically like a genre contract, right, with your reader. And this is such an amazing example of keeping, like, upholding your genre contract and then using the actual contents of the story itself to illuminate that theme. So, right, the bodies that get discovered that are the center of the investigation are saying something about the theme. The investigation that Camille goes on, first of all, puts her in contact, right, with all of these characters who are sort of different reflections of the theme. But then also the information, right, that she picks up in her effort to find out who's doing this, both like illuminates the theme, but also forces her to confront things in her internal arc, right?
Right.
So we have the marriage of the external and the internal like perfectly weaved together. And then, of course, at the end, we find out who did it. And that also tells us something about the theme. And so this is such a this is one of the most powerful ways that you can communicate a theme, right? Is by actually letting the story do the talking for you instead of trying to work so hard to make sure that the author or that the reader gets it, and instead curating that experience so that it's suffused through everything, so we're experiencing the different facets and the again, we're having an experience with it for ourselves instead of being told about. And so letting the plot be the way that you explore that theme through what you actually put into the plot, right, gives you those opportunities to explore that in meaningful ways.
Yeah, and hearing you say that, I think it can kind of, if you've never done it, sound like you're kind of chicken and egg, like it's going in a circle a little bit. But I think what really helps in this story is that every time she's bumping into additional information that's going towards this investigation, it is disrupting her personal constitution. Right? It's shaking something on the inside of her, and she has no choice but to do something about it. And when she chooses to try to ignore it, it becomes this sort of um, constant sort of spiraling that she does, reaching for alcohol, reaching for different things, which is what leads here. So I think seeing her do that in this story helps you to see this sort of tandemness going on right in front of you, and it's really clear, right, when she's doing things and then she starts spiraling, thinking about, well, when I was a kid, or when Adora did this, or whatever, right? And that's where we start seeing them sort of moving together. The closer she's getting to this thing that is supposed to be great for her professional life, the more she is going to the depths of the deepest darkness that she has experienced, even more than she realizes in her innards and in her personal life, right? Because of this case, in this story. And so what it make, like you talking about this, the way that I was seeing this also is a little bit on the flip side, because because she does this so well in the beginning, I have that that those choices and that tone and that being rock solid the way that it was, it substituted for a lot of details that we just didn't quite get yet, that she was able to sort of open some of those loops about Camille that made us curious about her as a person, not just as a professional, not just about why her boss would want her to cover this story, why she left this location, why she hasn't been in contact with her family, why she didn't even recognize her own sister when they
Yeah.
cross paths. You know what I mean? And you start asking all these questions. It's like, wait a minute, am I the only one noticing? Are we not just gonna talk about it? Right? And she's just like, hold my beer. Well, probably not my beer, but you know what I'm saying. And but because she did such a great job of establishing that tone and this sort of eeriness in the beginning, it bought her time and it gave her the room to be able to build the story. And I really, really liked that.
Yeah. Well, and I just want to like highlight as well. I think you mentioned this in plot, but this is also like such a case study in the importance of those first chapters to
Yeah,
establish tone and
absolutely.
expectations, right? Like, this book lets you know up front exactly. You don't know the specifics of where we're going, but again, we know that this is the floor. If you are already, you read that first chapter and you read about getting to Wind Gap and staying in a motel, that is going to like tell you everything you need to know about the ride you're about to go on.
That's right.
And it's such a great lesson in first chapters. If you read that chapter and you're like, that this is giving me the creeps, do put the book down. Don't keep reading because it's only getting worse from here. And so if you're looking for again, if you're comfortable reading this book, and you're looking for kind of like a an object lesson in how you establish, like how a first chapter establishes that, this is such a good example of that, because it really sets up the promise, right? It gives us the inciting incident, and it also is like the all of that tonal stuff is baked in so that you know whether or not this book is for you.
I would say that, and also what you would want to do anyway, but why it's so important here is it gives you a sort of sample of how dark this could get, right? Like, and I think that for me personally, that is so important because this is normally in a romance, it sort of is telling you the degree of what to expect, how steamy it's going to be, what to expect, the themes or whatever. Here it's doing that, but you already sort of know that you have this murder of this young girl, but then you also start seeing these questions around Camille and Camille's relationships. So we know up front that these two things are driving this story, and the fact that it's young girls and all these different things, I think that already lets you know that this is not your regular like cozy murder mystery, right? It's not it at all. And being able to establish that immediately, and the duality of this, somewhat like when we talked about before, when we talked about Fourth Wing, but that duality of this, it is helpful for you to make the decision that you want as a reader, but it also sort of establishes that reader writer contract. And you're like, okay, I like how you did this. You're placing your trust in that
Mm-hmm.
writer's storytelling ability. And what she does with it, y'all probably have said a million times how much I had problems with the story. But what she does with it is that you keep getting, this gets darker and deeper. Like,
Mm-hmm.
listen, y'all, I like dark romance. I don't care what nobody say. If anybody say anything about dark romance, I'm gonna point them to this book. Listen, I feel like it's nothing like when we read Ninth House. I think Ninth House had a lurking darkness to it,
Mm-hmm.
and the darkness felt almost like objective, like
Mm-hmm.
it felt almost like an institution, right?
Yeah.
Here, the darkness feels like people. It
Yeah,
feels like,
deeply
I don't know.
human.
It's like the proximity of it feels, it's almost like you going into, when you travel in some countries and they don't know about personal space. That's the way
Mm-hmm.
it feels in this story. And the fact that it is first person the way that it is, and the way that she wrote it, which we'll talk about today, it just takes this thing that already feels uber uncomfortable, and it
Oh.
just like, watch me work. It's like, this is Rachel's,
Oh.
this is Rachel's scream if you want to go faster. I don't want to go faster. I don't want to go
No.
faster. But Look at me. I don't want to go faster. But with the other note that I had that about this though is that she handles deeply uncomfortable material well.
Yeah.
We are talking about violence. We're talking about harm towards women. We're talking about
Mm,
things that are going on with young girls. And that's why I
mm,
already felt like, okay, you are going there. And I
mm,
know it's sort of one of those things that I wrestle with. So I told Rachel, like, you know me going there, I get sad. Y'all start crying. I'm not gonna
mhm.
lie. Like, so when she put her foot on that gas and she never lets up for the whole entire story, I'm just saying it is something to see, but it's also something that you are experiencing.
Yeah.
And so that's a part of that sort of um she's banking Gillian, she's banking on the trust and the rapport that she has been building since page 1, that
Mhm.
she's going to be able to take you somewhere that you are uncomfortable and you are unsure. And then in your mind, you're like, but I paid for this book, so I'm going to read it. And then she will have you riding that line where you are so curious. You're wondering what's going to happen to Camille. What happened to these little girls? Why are they not finding anything? And all the while, she's just digging it deeper and deeper. And so
Yeah.
I think what I'm saying in all of the notes that I'm saying right now and sort of merging them together is that I feel like my editor's note as far as this is that, you know, you have to earn trust as a writer.
Mhm.
And there are so many ways that you can do it. We have read some amazing stories.
Mm.
Sometimes it's in the creativity, sometimes it's in the written word, sometimes it's in the form of nostalgia, sometimes it's in the form of relationship because they are already a fan. And here, I think she earned it like the good old fashioned way with great storytelling. Now,
Mhm.
y'all, I still was scared and I still felt like, but so I'm not even gonna like, I'm just saying I'm keeping a buck. But she just did it with great storytelling. And I feel
Yeah.
like for the person where this is your jam, you're gonna feel like you're gonna feel like this is a very unique experience, from everything from the characters to the double ending, like a true thriller would have,
Mhm.
to the sort of rawness, if you will,
Mhm. Yeah.
of the storyline. And so I think it is a great thing if you're sort of having the aspirations of creating something that feels like uniquely you.
Mhm.
But part of that comes in the fact that she has mastered the basics. Baby,
Yeah.
ain't nothing basic about this. She
Yeah.
has mastered it and then took it up a notch or two or
Mhm.
three or five. And so, yeah, that was all my notes like rolled into one. But basically, I loved it, but I didn't like
I think that is perfectly. Again, that's actually more even generous than when you showed up and you were like, "I did." Some of the first words out of Dana's mouth when we showed up to start recording in the pre-show, she said, "I did not like this book."
I
I
didn't.
was
I
like, "Okay, tell me
didn't.
more."
Y'all, listen, I do not like things happening to babies. I do not like things when things are happening to women, which I get. I feel like she did it well, but I just felt like, dang, can you take your foot off of our throat? I cannot breathe. Yeah, that's what I felt.
Yeah.
I cannot breathe. But here, with that said, I think this is the value of being a part of a space like a book club.
Mhm.
Also having conversations, because the reality is this is a set of skills.
Mhm.
You may decide,
Yeah.
I don't want to go all the way there, but maybe I want to explore the depths of family, or I want to
Mhm.
explore the depths of um, redemption, or I want to explore
Yeah.
the depths of whatever. That's what she's doing. Except for
Mhm.
here, it's like the trauma of um, generational trauma
Mhm.
around. Honestly, I think you could say it a whole bunch of ways, but I would say almost in motherhood.
Yeah. Oh,
And
yeah. It's definitely like like the generational trauma of female forms of violence.
yeah, I would say you could say that, and I think in general, but I think the reason why I would say specifically with mothering, because
Mm.
there is something very, we talked about this in the pre-show or whatever, but there is something very special about a relationship between a mother and a daughter.
Hmm.
And when you talk about the breakdown of that, that's not
Yeah.
just about a woman, right?
Yeah.
If you were, I mean, it is a woman in general, and you were
Right.
talking about Camille's womanhood that was affected by that relationship.
Hmm.
But when you talk about the fact that I can't remember what the grandmother's name was,
Joya.
yeah, Joya, then you Adora, then you have Camille, then you have Amma.
Hmm.
Like, what you're talking about is the breakdown in the parental relationship between the mother and the daughter. And I think
Yeah.
that is something that is usual, that is very rarely tempered with, that
Hmm.
I can even
Yeah.
remember ever. Now, I'm not saying no one has ever done it, but I
Yeah.
think there's something very unique about that. And the fact that you
Hmm.
begin to explore that around violence in general, and
Yeah.
as that sort of, which we'll talk about in plot, where that sort of you start zeroing in, and then you kind of get to Camille,
Yeah.
and you realize like it's not just about harm being done to these young ladies or women in general, but how
Yeah.
this sort of, there's this trickling effect. And so I think even if you decide that, I don't want to go here, I don't want to talk about violence in this way. I mean, when we gave an example of like things we never got over in Knock 'em Out, that was about exploring. Well, part of the theme was, exploring the effects of children when you have parents with addictions,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
What happened with them and their father, and what happened with the breakdown of that relationship after the passing of their mother, and
Yeah.
grief, right? So there's so many different ways, but part of this, which was done here, was that it wasn't treated as a separate thing.
Yeah.
It was the same thing, because
Hmm.
they kept sort of bumping into each other as
Yeah.
she was going along. So again, I think that's the part of where, reading something. I feel like I say this every time you pick a book, read it outside of your comfort zone.
I'm actually just here as the resident
No.
like comfort zone breaker. Like that's actually that's my role on the podcast is like I bring the weird stuff that makes everybody uncomfortable.
I feel like we gonna be fired. Like no, I'm okay with being in my comfort zone. But yeah, so I think that's what it is. I think talking about that particular um those particular relationships, and the fact that I guess in the back I would have called it like taboo a little bit, but
Hmm.
um I think it goes beyond that because of the adjacent crimes and things that are
Hmm.
happening in the story, and the way that they absorbed that violence and chose
Hmm.
to act out as individuals. And I think
Yeah.
that is where that woman violence, but I think that is more
Yeah.
so about um, how they took it in, and then how they acted out from that place
Yeah.
of hurt and harm.
Yeah.
And I feel like I said this, and I sort of, y'all, my brain's been everywhere, that I feel like I don't know if I completed the thought, but I think it made me think about, ultimately, as we've had this conversation, about, the things that you learn and you absorb as a writer about people, and how
Hmm.
people interact with each other, and how grief affects people, and how love affects people, and how family or the lack of family affects people, and how people being brought up and raised in these conditions where it was sort of like outside in front of the world, and there were
Hmm.
these doting mothers, and then
Hmm.
behind closed doors it's like it turned off,
Yeah.
and I think that's one of those, I think it's one of the gifts that comes with writing, that you get
Yeah.
to explore that and consider that and bring
Yeah.
it to the page.
Yeah, and there's a couple things that I just kind of want to add on to that. Number one, I think there really is like the beauty of writing is that you have the opportunity to explore things with empathy, to
Mm-hmm.
really understand that people are not as simple as sometimes we like to make them out to be in our even in our own minds, right? Where we sort of want to reduce things to their sort of like simplest terms, but that people are deeply complex. And so, you know, even these despicable characters, right, in the story, we see that they also are sort of like, they've been shaped by violence and control, and it doesn't make any of it right, but it's, you're just seeing this, like you said, there's this sort of human darkness, there's this thing of human experience that in general, right, writers have the opportunity to explore what it means to be human, and what, how we interpret experiences and how we are shaped by them. And I
Mhm.
think that she really she treats that with a lot of honestly a lot more care than you would expect in a crime novel, right? Like, we're so often, a crime novel is like, ah, look, you know, we've got a villain, and sometimes it's very clean cut. This, there's nothing clean cut about the characters in this story. um so the last thing that I want to like mention when it comes to like writers and themes, one of the ways that I talk to my students about theme often is that a lot of times, especially when you're early in and you're new in writing, is themes are something that very often emerge from the story.
Mhm.
So a lot of my experience with writers is they will write a story thinking it's about one thing, and then when they go through it and write it, they kind of see like the truth of the thing, the truth of the story, um, in the writing of it, where they say, oh, I kind of showed up with this expectation of this is what my story is going to be, and then when I wrote it, I discovered sort of like what's like the next layer of like what's more true about the story and what's more true about the story. And so that process, then when you start to, once you get through like a couple of drafts, right, and you're able to really see your story clearly, then you can say, okay, now that I know what the story is really about, you can actually begin to intentionally refine it so that it fully represents the thing that you want it to be. And that's why that iterative process is so important, because sometimes,
Mhm.
again, I've had clients, for particularly with my new writers, think that they've got this idea for this story and they're like, it's going to be about this thing. And I'm like, amazing, let's get into that first draft. We start writing. By the time they get to the end of the first draft, right, they're like, oh, I actually don't want to write about like this particular thing. It's really about this bit here. And it's like, ah, perfect, right? So we're going to shape it, we're going to develop it so that in your next draft, right, you write that with your next level of intention. And then when you go through those layers, right, you get clearer and clearer on what your story is really about, and then you begin to refine it so that it like fully represents that thing that you want it to be. And so not putting all the pressure on like the theme to like try to like to feel like you have to stuff it onto the story. Like, what is the story inviting, right? Like, once you've written it, like, what is the story actually inviting you to talk about and to say and to explore, and let it be sort of like a mutual kind of like emergence from the story and from you, and let those things come together and sort of marry in the middle.
Yeah, I agree. I'm always reminding students that most of the time your first draft is the obvious picks of everything.
Hmm.
It's really not. You think it's great because you thought of it, and some
Yeah.
level of it is. But what happens is, as you go through that process and you are getting to know it, and you're getting to know yourself in that space, and you're getting to
Hmm.
know those characters, you can begin to sort of pick and pull and see what levers can be pulled and sort of utilize. And I would agree. I think there is some meeting in the middle, and I also feel like there are a lot of times where I'm sure some aspect of this has been there the entire time, but
Hmm.
how um the depths in which it permeated everything, sort of like coated everything, probably was nowhere near where it ended. And that's just the magic, if you will, of editing and clarity. Um, was there any other notes that we did not cover that you want to make sure that we talk about before we close out this conversation around sharp objects?
No, ma'am. I think, you know, we covered as much as we could conceivably cover about this book across 4 episodes. I'm quite pleased with where we landed. So, we'll be ready to put this one to bed and move on to something with a happily ever after.
Please already. Well, you know what? I think this has been a great discussion. I think it is another great one to add to our body of previously read books. And I think this is a great sort of outlier if this is not your genre to be able to experience something different. And we will be back next week to kick off our first episode of Broken Harbor by Catherine Cowles. And yes, HEA in the house. Pretty please sprinkle it on top. Look, I need some balance in my life. And so if you haven't done so already, don't forget to visit us online at storydeepdive.com. Don't forget to thumbs up, hard, interact, and engage with wherever it is that you listen to this podcast, or if you're viewing it on YouTube. We would absolutely love to hear from you. We are already starting to pick our books for 2027. Who are we? We are on a mission.
That's crazy. It's the middle of the year and we are already projecting out to 2027. That is crazy.
Won't he do it? Won't he do it? Yeah, that's because you got to be organized. You got to be ready. So with that said, we will be back next week. Take care. And as always, happy writing. Goodbye.